Joining me now is political strategist Bruce Hawker, joining me here in the studio, and in Canberra, Grahame Morris, political consultant. Grahame Morris, first to you. Your reaction to the LNP's decision in Queensland to essentially block the defection of Ian Macfarlane? A win for common sense, perhaps?
Well, I think that's right, but I was amazed. I thought the numbers would go the other way. But I was looking, I looked it up this morning. Do you know in most parts of the world it is illegal to sleep with your first cousin? In Australia, it's actually not illegal to marry your first cousin, but there are lots of warnings that anything the union produces can have severe problems, and I think we've just proved it. Look, I was
wondering where you're going with that, Grahame, but what about Ian Macfarlane? Should he quit politics now? Does he deserve to stay until at least the next election? What happens?
No, look, he's quite entitled to sit there until the next election. It'd be interesting to know whether the state executive actually withdraws his pre-selection or reopens it. More than likely. Look, I feel sorry for him.
Just on the rules there, because his pre-selection's already been confirmed, so is there scope to reopen it? Is that what's likely to happen here?
Yeah. Look, any executive on the any state division can withdraw somebody's pre-selection. It's messy and it's untidy, but it can be done. But look, I would have thought Ian comes back to the Parliament, he probably decides to sit with the National Party. There's nothing the executive can do about that. But his pre-selection would be in a bit of trouble. And I find this really disappointing because he's had a magnificent career. You would have thought maybe after the next election he would go into some of the areas that he loves, innovation and whatnot. He'd be welcome on any board room in the country, or would have been. And now it's sort of tainted a bit and you think, bugger, it was so unnecessary. But it shows you in politics just how when you try to be tricky, things go wrong.
Bruce Hawker, he has tried to be a bit tricky here. It seems a miscalculation as well. And look, he did feel he had a bit more to give on the front bench, but this wasn't a huge defection. It was not like he was defecting from the Liberals to Labor, for example. So has all this been, a bit blown out of proportion, perhaps?
It wasn't a real Peter Slipper style thing, was it? No. It was supporting a government, keeping a government in power. He would have basically still been a voice for the coalition, but I think the Prime Minister's authority would have been severely undermined had this kept going down this path where he was going to be forced on them or on him in the cabinet. That would not have been a very good look at all. But what I think it is going to continue to do is build up tension between the coalition partners, particularly amongst people in the National Party who were quite unhappy with Turnbull's ascendancy to the Prime Ministership. They see him as being far too much of a small L Liberal for their liking, and far too generous in a lot of his public statements on public policy, particularly things like same-sex marriage and so forth. So I think this is going to be an ongoing problem. It's not going to go away, and we've already heard Barnaby and others making disappointed noises today, and we may not have seen the end of it either, but it'll be very interesting to see where it goes. I mean, the fella is, I think, 59 or 60 years old. It's not like he should be really staying around in politics for all that much longer anyway, but he obviously thinks he's got more to contribute. But I think we'll see more tension building over this, and it really is going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, I thought today when I saw that result, yes, it was a surprise. The vote went 14 to 12. Grahame Morris, this is a pretty big win for Malcolm Turnbull as I see it. Well, perhaps just dodging a bullet, really.
Well, maybe, but all of this piffle that some of the journos were going on about is that Macca was coming back into the ministry, 2 weeks from Tuesday, was just plain stupid. Malcolm Turnbull decides when there's going to be a reshuffle, and there's not going to be a reshuffle for a long time. The only way Macca comes back in is if Barnaby Joyce, is if the National Party leader Warren Truss retires, Barnaby Joyce becomes leader, and somehow or other Macca becomes the deputy. Then he's automatically in the ministry. But any other way, he wasn't coming back into the ministry. It was just some of the journos were just silly.
Speaking of retirements, it looks like Tony Abbott will remain until at least the next election. He's made that pretty clear, I think. Bruce, can I ask you, this got a little bit of Kevin Rudd about it, or is there something different going on here?
Well, I think when Kevin was rolled by Julia Gillard and the others inside the Labor Party, he was still a popular figure publicly, and there was a big backlash against the way in which he was removed. The difference between Rudd and Abbott is that I think there was a collective sigh of relief when Abbott vacated the prime ministership. Certainly in the public's mind, they felt that he wasn't really their cup of tea, and that Malcolm Turnbull is much more of their liking, certainly for the time being anyway. So I don't think the comparisons are fair, and I think he needs to be careful about how far he goes, because it clearly is creating problems inside the coalition. There's real tension there, and once again it shows a real problem within the ranks of the Liberal Party and the coalition, which were also sort of in a funny way apparent when Rudd was the Prime Minister too. You know, there were Conservative people inside the Labor Party who didn't like the way in which Rudd was being a reformist and taking the party much more down a modernist sort of line, not so affiliated to the unions. Well, now you've got Turnbull doing those sorts of things too. In fact, he's the first Liberal leader probably since Menzies who's taken his party right to the centre, maybe even a little bit to the left in some respects, and is challenging Labor in that area and saying, well, I'm going to take this centre ground. So that's upsetting people in the Labor Party, but it's also worrying people inside the Liberal Party about where this is going to take them in the longer term, and the ideologues are very upset about that.
Well, Tony Abbott's certainly framing himself as a centre-right voice, but particularly on national security matters as well. Grahame Morris, is that fair enough? And also, in the same vein, we've seen Bronwyn Bishop also say in recent days that national security is a big issue, therefore she thinks she should remain in Parliament as well.
Yeah, look, I've read all that. The former PM, I don't think we really know yet. I think he's quite entitled to spend the next couple of months having a think about what he wants to do and whether or not there's some passion in him for a couple of other jobs that I think probably will be out there. I don't know. And as of now, I'm not sure he knows. I saw Bronwyn Bishop stuff too about you know, about global instability. That's as good any reason as any to stay in the Parliament. But you know, you keep saying that, you know, somehow or other this is all a threat to Malcolm Turnbull. Hey, it ain't. The party room behind him has said, hey, we might just win our seats back now thanks to Malcolm. And that's the mood. Yes, there's sort of some disappointment among 4 or 5 people, but that's it.
Well, I think Bronwyn Bishop, I mean, that's really quite hilarious, isn't it? Going to national security, international insecurity as a reason for becoming or remaining the member for McKellar. Which helicopter squadron is she going to be commanding?
Oh, come on. That was a little unkind. Bruce Hawker, Grahame Morris, thanks for joining us on the program today. We'll have to leave it there.
Thank you.